Welcome to Creators Cafe. I'm your host, Jessica Payne. I'm a performer, performance coach, and multi-hyphenate creator. I'm going to be bringing you conversations with some of my favorite creators where we talk about the sublime and the specifics of the creative journey. So grab a drink, get cozy. Let's go. My guest, Leonora Anzaldua, is a filmmaker, photographer, and storyteller. She has worked on American Horror Story, shot documentaries across Asia, created many award-winning short films, and shot with AwesomenessTV and Skybound Entertainment. Leonora has worked with Barnes & Noble, All Saints, Ball is Life, Buzzfeed Branded, Fox Studios, and WNYC Studios. Her works have screened at many festivals and earned her awards and nominations such as the Sun Cinematography Award and a Student Emmy nom. That's the thing. She creates images through her work that are so stunning. They combine deep character reflection and beautiful storytelling. I encourage you to check out her website so you can see what her work looks like while we're talking. She's inspired by Renaissance painters, contemporary studio artists, and her own deep dive into her cultural representation. She is a passionate creator committed to amplifying underrepresented voices, and I am so glad to have her voice on my show. Please welcome my friend, Leonora Anzaldua. Well, cheers, Leonora Anzaldua. Welcome to Creators Cafe. Cheers.
Thank you.
And could you please say your name, because it's so much more beautiful when you say it.
My name is Leonora Anzaldua.
So delicious. I love it. And what are you drinking today?
I just looked and I forgot again.
Balmars?
Ballantine's very old Scotch whiskey. Very old. They want you to know it's very old on the label.
It was like 17 years old when I was gifted it, and that was a few years ago. So it's especially very old.
Yes, very old Scotch whiskey. It's delicious.
It's really smooth. I like it. Well, welcome. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
It's good to catch up. We've done a lot of projects in the past, but I haven't seen you as much in the last little bit, so yeah. I'm glad to have you here.
I've been in a little hole.
Yeah, it's been a hole, but
yeah.
You're coming out of it, and I'm glad. And you look fantastic. If you're just listening, she is wearing fantastic leather look pants and a statement necklace and looks amazing. So
thank you.
So you've done so many things in your career. How do you think of yourself as an artist? What are kind of the main labels that you are leaning into now, or think of yourself overall as holding?
I definitely will always think of myself as a photographer. That was kind of my first thing. When I was very little, I loved art. Like I was a toddler and would be at art museums, like obsessed with abstract paintings and stuff. And my mom was just like, "What are you looking at? This is a square on a canvas." Like she just I loved it. And my mom was very patient with me, but I was the one dragging my feet in art museums as a toddler. I was like, "But I want to look at this longer." And so I always was really drawn to art. I loved painting, and I was also vulnerable to the myth of natural talent, I guess, and thought that I was bad at drawing, and so photography allowed me to circumvent that, and I just never ended up working on learning to draw, and so but I found cameras to be a great way to express myself and be able to show things that were inside visually. And as I grew as a photographer, I started to create worlds and understood how to manipulate things with lenses and light. And so that will definitely always be a part of me. And I think generally, I write poetry and I make films, and I think maybe storyteller is the best way. I really think of filmmaking very unlike the studio model as a holistic endeavor. And so for me, it's the siloing of the different roles in filmmaking is awkward and odd. And which isn't to say that the process is not collaborative, very much the opposite, but I just think of everybody as a person that's there to make and contribute, and we all have different things that maybe we're a little bit more experienced at or skilled at, but that doesn't mean that anybody on the team doesn't have things to contribute in other areas of filmmaking either. If that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And I've been on multiple sets with you, and you always have such a calm and joyful, yet artistically passionate and driven presence. It's really inspiring to work with you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think one of the things that I like about working on set with you is you have this attention to detail, but you collaborate really well and beautifully. And you manage to bring a beautiful aesthetic to every piece I've worked with you on. What has influenced your aesthetic? Or kind of how you go about playing with light and bringing that mixture of kinesthetic movement and light along with this in-depth character work. I think that's something you do really incredibly well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of it is because to me, it's storytelling, and like the camera also is a character. It's also telling the story. And like I said, I don't think of it as a segmented, siloed kind of thing where this is your job, that's your job. I definitely feel like it's all of our jobs to help each other do the best job that we can. What has influenced my work with light is Caravaggio. He's my favorite painter.
Yeah.
And the drama of chiaroscuro lighting just like makes my heart like explode. I really love like moody lighting and the mystery of darkness, and generally paintings, especially Renaissance paintings, influence my lighting quite a bit. I have confused many a director coming for cinematography interviews by bringing paintings to them as references for the movie, because I don't think in terms of replicating other films. I think in terms of paintings and photography. I had the benefit, the pleasure, and was fortunate to have a really brilliant photographer as one of my photo teachers at Yale, Gregory Crutzen, who also makes just like the most magical, beautiful images that are just like stories in a frame. And his lighting also really like just makes my heart happy. So that from a lighting perspective, from camera movement perspective, I think that the thing that I'm like naturally most gifted at is handheld camera work, and a lot of that I think comes from being an actor and being a dancer. And having been trained as a gymnast and a dancer as a kid, like just sort of being able to move gracefully and being very aware of body position and isolation of movement, how to bend into my hips and move in my knees without jiggling a ton, right? Which of course handheld always has some breath to it, but the more you can keep still, the more elegant it'll be. And
I've definitely noticed that your work with handheld makes us feel like the audience is a third character in the room. So it feels like another person, as opposed to wobbly camera trying to evoke a mood by pushing it. It feels very natural as you're moving, where we want to move naturally.
I mean, I think that's what I mean about the character, the camera as a character, and also why I think that, being an actor informs that as well. It's like I do feel like I'm in the scene with the actors, and especially when I'm shooting a close-up of someone in an emotional moment, it's like I am with them, and like there's little things I'm responding to. It's like I'm feeling their beats and their beat changes, and like if something sad happens, like I kind of just exhale a little bit and the camera drops just a little, but the camera feels like she feels, right? So yeah, that I think in that way, like my acting background informs camera work. I was a very, very shy child, and so I didn't learn to act until I was an adult in college. And but I did do theater productions as a kid on crew, and so there's something that I really love about film, motion picture, in that like you get the like wonderful synergy of a theater production, but you also get to keep like a picture of it at the end, right? So it's like combines these two things that I really enjoy a lot. So that does that, like just like the joy of creative collaboration is, I think, another thing that does inform, and it's that like deep pleasure I take in what other people contribute to, which like maybe I don't know that informs so much my like visual approach as like my emotional or collaborative approach, the way that I do try to like welcome other people's input, and even if we have a plan for how things are going, like hear people if they have ideas, and from a like somebody doing electric work to the actor who maybe like has a cool idea for how to do a scene, and like trying to add a little bit of flexibility to whatever the plan was, if it's possible, so that people can contribute, because you never really know how much better something could be if you don't allow other people to also contribute their ideas. So,
yeah, that's beautiful. From the filmmaking side, what are some of your favorite projects that you've worked on?
Oh gosh,
It's a
hard question.
That's a big question.
Yeah.
Is there anybody that you worked with that it felt really special, or you got something out of working with them on the project that you really just loved it as part of the process?
There's Ian Asbjornsen is someone that I went to graduate school with, and he is a total sweetheart and just so incredibly creative. He's maybe the only person that's ever surprised me with camera movement. And the way that he just thinks about visuals is really fun for me, because he's so creative, and I mean, one of the things that I love about cinematography, even though I'm doing a lot less of it now, is I do like that when a director brings like such specific ideas that challenge me to make pictures that never would have come out of my head. And also, digging into their brain and using the skill sets that I have to help them realize something that they wouldn't be able to do with their technical skill set, right? And so it's like looking at the picture and saying, oh, this is what you want to make. Okay. Whether it's a reference photo or a neat idea, just in abstract, just something that like kind of and never would have come out of me. And he very much does that. He just kind of surprises me with where he puts the camera or how he moves it. And so that's a lot of fun. I really like when people come up with ideas that we're not sure are possible to execute.
So
and then we have
it?
we have to figure out how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
That is really fun. I love camera tricks. I really, really enjoy any kind of like front screen, rear screen projection tricks. And I do this stuff a lot, and in a way that like maybe people don't even realize that it is a camera trick. And
there was a few things when I was kind of researching this. I love researching my friends. That I was grateful on your website that you had labeled kind of your techniques that you were using.
Yeah, because otherwise people don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't know. And I feel like I know a lot of this. Maybe for the audience that doesn't know what those particular terms are, just could you give a brief overview?
Yeah, so like front screen projection or rear screen projection would be where the background of a scene is not physically there, but it is created by a projector. Either a projector that's hitting the screen on the front or from behind. There's two different types of screen projector setups that you can use. And it's a really fun kind of way to warp reality. And if you do it successfully, it doesn't even look like it's happening. But you see this probably most often with car scenes, because it's a safe way to have people perform a scene while driving without having to spend the money to get a car to tow them, because you obviously can't have actors driving along and performing in the scene because they'll likely to get into a car accident, and so you have to have ways to ensure the safety of the actors and also the crew that are shooting. And so one of the less expensive ways to do that is to drive a car onto a stage, put up a screen behind them with respect to wherever the camera is, and then project the background onto the screen. And it's very fun. And the trick to it is that you have to light the actors without lighting the screen, because if the screen gets light on it, then it washes out. And so it's like a very fun lighting exercise. And yeah, that's the kind of stuff I like to do. And then I guess going back to your other question, the other person that comes to mind is our friend Emily McGregor, who is just so funny and has such a great time. And she and I have such a great time together when we shoot. And she also comes up with really fun ideas for creative things that we can do in terms of shooting. And she also is as insane about pre-production and detail as I am.
Yeah.
And so we both actually independently have like very, very detailed spreadsheets that we will shot. Like we did this before we even knew each other, and it was like, oh, you're my kindred spirit. It's like the level to which we both obsess over shot lists and planning. It makes for a very good match, because it's like we just like kind of have the like, okay, we both know what's going on. And I think the other thing about us is that like we're both that intense level of planner type personality without being so rigid that we can't regroup when something comes up. And so we both become very flexible on the day, but it's because we have this like checklist that we know that we can go back to and be like, okay, did everything that we get cover all our check boxes on this list? Okay, great. Then we have the scene.
Yeah.
And so it's because like we both do so much planning and so much discussion before that we're both really comfortable, and then are happy to improvise because we have our, like, that's how we wrap our brains around it, and we both do that in a similar way. So it's really fun and enjoyable. Yeah.
I love working with both of you because of exactly that. As an actor, you feel like you're in such good hands because you know that the artistic side is being taken care of so well, and you are both wonderful in the moment and on the day. So I just want everyone to work like you both on set. Like, all the homework is done, and now we're here, we're prepared, and we're ready to play. And that
I've
that
actually
mixture
had
is
actors
amazing.
that just like got like so annoyed with having to deal with other people's work styles after working with me.
It's
I
so
feel
great.
bad. I feel like I ruined them. It's like,
Damn right.
like, you're so organized and you talk to us about the characters and like
Yup.
you tell us what's going on. Nobody does that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've said before about working with your mentor on American Horror Story. Can you talk about that experience?
Yeah. Michael Goy very kindly hired me as a camera PA, camera department production assistant on American Horror Story for the Asylum season, which was pretty early.
Yeah.
It was very fun. I really liked that season. It was really just like, oh gosh. It was really fun to be there with that set of actors. Just James Cromwell, Jessica Lange, like they're just so, Zachary Quinto, just really like gracious, incredibly talented. Oh, Evan Peters, like they're all so talented, and it's just like, not that any of them even knows who I am, but just like to be there and like watch them work, and they were so brilliant and so professional, and it was just lovely to be a part of it. And I think like to know that we were making something good, you know, that it's like, I mean, they were very long days, they were very hard days, but like when you're exhausted and you're not getting enough sleep, and you're on Union Max days and Union Min turnarounds, and then you get to like watch James Cromwell and Jessica Lange just be brilliant. You're like, oh well, at least we're like doing this to make something good, you know. It definitely helps with the fatigue and the difficulty. And the other thing that I took from that, which I think was really important for me at the time, was that like the extent to which no matter what like quote unquote level of production you're on, the work is the same. It's not different. And I think there tends to be sometimes, occasionally, an attitude amongst crew who are frustrated with, you know, low budget indie productions that, you know, this isn't being run well, complaining about this, that, or the other thing. And yeah, I mean, there are definitely differences. There's different, you know, it's different when you have an omelet station in the morning when you get there. That's not an indie production thing. You don't get sushi at 3 p.m. as a snack, but the work is the same. There's still the like, oh no, like somebody forgot the key prop for this scene, and now we all have to figure out how to deal with that, right? Or we're rearranging the day because of it, or whatever, or, you know, all the same stuff comes up, and it's really just like about problem solving. The job is problem solving, and there's no magical set that is so well funded and perfect and organized that nothing ever goes wrong. The job is problem solving. And it really, you know, sometimes when people have less patience for things going wrong, especially when you're in charge and you wish that you had the foresight to prevent something, because that's most of pre-production, is preventing problems before they arise, right? Which I try to do as much as I can, and I think that's how you get a smooth set. But if you're in a position where, you know, something comes up that's a really big problem that you didn't foresee, because that's what production is, and then people have kind of negative attitudes about it, it can be a little bit discouraging. And it's really nice to have the perspective of like, yeah, there's no perfect world where nothing goes wrong. Like this job is problem solving, and it doesn't matter what level you're doing it on. You're just problem solving.
I would love to talk about your Latina Hollywood project, and if anybody's just listening, it's something definitely worth checking out on your website. The photography that you've done there is so beautiful and powerful, and I know that was early in your career, but it's still incredible. And then to see your later work and know that that's where it came from is really cool. So could you just talk about where that project came from and what it kind of means to you looking back on it?
Yeah. So that project was extremely fun for me. where it came from was college. The Yale School of Art has an interesting structure to photography, or at least it did decades ago. Yes. So when I was in college, the Yale School of Art had 3 photography classes: beginner, intermediate, and advanced, and that was it. And I don't know if it's still the same or if they've, created any specialized like lighting classes or anything like that. But the way that it was structured back then was all the classes were project work, and you would figure out whatever project you wanted to do, and then you would learn technical skills as needed to support your project. So some people would start, they would start doing large format, and then the whole class would learn, like get a tutorial in large format photography, so that person would have the training to take the field camera out and do 4x5 or whatever. Which is, that's the size of the negative. So it's those old-fashioned cameras with the bellows and the hood. And gotcha, the negative is 4 inches by 5 inches. So you can make very large prints from the negatives from these cameras. They're beautiful. We did have an 8x10, but it was a studio camera, so it's just so heavy that you can't really take it out. But if you could have taken photos in a studio with the 8x10 if you wanted. All of the classes were set up such that every student would devise a project for the class, and similar to the larger format cameras, you would get to learn to use medium format cameras or large format cameras if somebody had a project. We would also learn to print color if somebody wanted to print color, and it was very long ago, so this is not digital printing, and so I was a very shy child, as I said, and I had actually known how to use an SLR and had taken film photos since I was like 12. I already knew how to print black and white by the time I got to college, and had always just taken very quiet photos. Like, I would wander about the street. I took really pretty pictures of like dead flowers or like trash. Like, it was just like very meditative. I would wander about and just take pictures. So when I was challenged to come up with a project, I thought, well, maybe I'll branch out and I'll take pictures of people. And so I started doing that, and I took some pictures of my friends, which was like the most people-y I could get because I was too shy to do street photography, though I very much admire street photographers. Well, I'm not too shy to do street photography anymore, but I always thought it was like super cool, but I was way too shy to do that. And then at some point I started taking photos of myself, and I found that to be a really easy way to get used to taking photos of people without sort of the discomfort of social interaction.
Yeah, sure.
And so I was doing self-portraits, and then trying to figure out why I was doing self-portraits and what this project actually was, because, it was sort of lacking in anything tying it together. And my professor was merciless in critique.
Ooh, okay.
But very actually, I realized later, like, very interested in my development and very supportive, but just one of those like tough love kind of teachers. And so I had a hard time with his critiques for a while because they were so like blunt, and I was a very sensitive kid. But he really, like, he took us to gallery shows in New York City. We saw some projects that different people had done. He was, we went, 2 of his classes went to see shows in the city, and there were 3 or 4 that he had picked because he thought that I would like them and get something out of them. One of them was Nikki S. Lee, who did these like self-portraits where she physically transformed, but she also like merged herself in different communities. So like it was different like ages, ethnicities, hobbies. There's like, you know, skateboarders, old ladies. Like, it's really interesting. It's a really interesting project. But I was engaging with other people's work, and eventually I started like doing this introspection, and at the same time I was doing a class about the representation of race in U.S. mass media, and I was about 20, and I was also remembering some of my earliest memories as a child where I just thought I was ugly because I had brown hair. And thinking about that and sort of where that idea even came from. Because by this point I had gotten to the point where it wasn't like I didn't think I was the most beautiful person in the world, but I didn't want to be someone else, right? Like, and I think that's a nice place to get to, and you know, it's
especially
like,
by 20.
yeah, very natural when you're especially when you're going through like middle school and stuff, to just like feel so insecure that you're just like, imagine that like life would be better if you were someone else, you know, like you looked a different way or had a different family or whatever it is that you feel insecure about. And so by this point I was like, well, like, you know, even the friends that I had like thought were so wonderful, and I still did when I was younger, and also at that time, it was like, but I'm glad I'm me. I don't want to be someone else. But looking back at pictures of myself when I was this very little girl, I mean, I was 2 or 3, and I would just stare in the mirror like hating myself. It was very, very little, and thinking like, oh, if only I had blonde hair, I would be pretty. And then looking at these photos of this just sweet, cute little kid, and like thinking how sad it was that I felt that way. And also like, then I wouldn't rather be anyone else was kind of a conscious decision that came from that was like, I don't want to be 60 looking back at photos of me when I'm 20 thinking, why did I hate myself? Like, what a waste of time, you know? And so there was that, and I started to think about like where that came from. And the only answer I really could come up with was like media images that I was consuming, you know. I mean, there were lots of like older ladies, like older Mexican ladies that my family was friends with that looked like me, that, you know, it was like, I thought they were beautiful. I just didn't, you know, it was just like this weird like cultural messaging that I was getting. And I thought about it, and it was like, well, this is like, you know, Betty and Veronica, and this is Cinderella and the Wicked Stepsisters, and it's the people that look like me on screen were not people that I wanted to be. The characters were not characters that I wanted to be. Like, I mean, Betty's so fun. She's like athletic, and she was like excited about life, and she's adventurous, and like Veronica just sits around and like paints her nails. She's so boring. And just like and so, you know, I started to think about that, and that led me to this project of like, why is it that these images of these women that I should have seen myself in were like impacting me in such a negative way, right? And what is the history of this representation of Latinas? And over the course of sort of the 20th century / early 21st century, very early at that time, how have Latinas been represented? What does that mean to Latinas consuming this media? What does it mean to society, and how people perceive us? And also, what does it mean to be that person? Like that celebrity character that's commodified and packaged in this way. And how did they feel about this? And I mean, you see varying iterations, and I think a lot of it has to do with like how much agency that person has in their celebrity. But you see it, I mean, you see celebrity destroy people all the time, right?
Yeah.
And like Carmen Miranda is a great example of someone who just was it was just so heavy on her, right? But Dolores del Rio, like, she really flourished. And to be fair, she had like an A-lister, like, leading lady career. Yeah, different people. I mean, I found it really interesting to engage with these people, and it started to become character work when it became, how did they feel about it, right? Who is this person underneath this commodity? And then, and also another thing that I was interested in were like the socioeconomic and political circumstances during which these different people were famous and how that impacted the way that they were packaged. And so anyway, I did this series that became my thesis project that was about, and another thing at that time, it was like just after the 2000 census, and there was all this stuff in the media about like the Latin invasion and the Latin explosion, and it was like Ricky Martin and J-Lo, and where are all these people coming from? And I lived in San Diego my whole life. I was like, what is this madness? Like, we've been here the whole time. Like, and I met people at Yale who were American Studies majors at Yale that didn't know that the American Southwest used to be Mexico.
Oh my gosh.
And I was just like, I don't, like, we've been here.
Wow.
The border crossed us.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was another thing that was kind of like informing my thinking and like shaped this project, was like, what is this odd thing that's happening in the media, and so anyway, that was where it came from, and it became my thesis project, and I looked at different characters and the economic and political circumstances during which they were famous, and kind of talked about that and how that influenced the way that they were represented in media. And so it became a project about like Latinas in Hollywood and sort of how that was influenced by bigger sort of factors, and also how it influenced the people that were packaged this way, how it influences the individuals who receive it, both who are Latina and who aren't. And I did a critique of that project, right at the beginning of when I started making sense of what it was and why I was doing self-portraits and what the project was going to become. It was before it had taken shape into my thesis project, but I had decided that I had like envisioned my thesis project and was like, oh, this is what I'm going to pitch. It was the end of my junior year, and so I knew that was what I was going to do. And my photography professor, who was the one who had been so hard on me, that I put up this series that was like 4 or 5 pictures that I had done over spring break that were like, the project was really taking shape. And he walked along and like looked at them, and he just like took this like dramatic pause, and he said, I think you're working in the wrong medium. This feels like it should be a film. And I was like, oh, well, that's an idea. Wow. I was like, what a great idea. And it did make perfect sense in terms of like what I was talking about and what I was engaging with. I didn't have time to take an intro film class before I graduated, because I was already in like, basically film and photography are both so many like lab hours, like you can't really take both at once. And so I had to do a photography, like I had to do advanced photography twice the next year, because I had to get enough pictures printed and like do my thesis project. So I wasn't able to do a film class until after I graduated, but then I took an intro film class after I was done and had been working for a while, and decided that I was ready to apply for an MFA and wanted to figure out what I was going to do for that, and figured I should like try filmmaking before I just like jump into an MFA program. I was like, it seems like a good idea, but I don't know if I would actually like it in practice.
Yeah.
And then I did, and I like loved it, and I discovered that it combined like all the wonderful parts of theater with like all the wonderful parts of photography, and I was like, this is it. This is like what I'm supposed to do.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And you already had all of the movement side of things as well. So taking photography into a moving medium makes so much sense.
It was, yeah, I think that's one of the things that like was, because lighting was super easy for me, because with the Latina Hollywood project, I was working on film. It was 2000, 2001, digital wasn't what it is now. And so this was all still film photography. I was using self-timers and really crummy clamp lights, but I was recreating pictures. And so it was like, I was like working with like angles and color and different stuff. And so all that stuff I had figured out by lighting myself, and especially like these were self-portraits that I was doing alone. And so I had to learn pretty quickly not to mess up, because I was doing them on film, so I had to take them back and process the film and then print the film, and it was 2 or 3 weeks of pre-production to put together a photo, and then if I messed it up, then I'm going back to pre-production again. So you learn pretty fast when you lose 3 weeks from a mistake.
Wow.
And so I had basically taught myself to light that way. I mean, I learned a lot more in graduate school about different lights and tools and stuff, but like I got the concept from that because I was lighting myself blind. And so, and I knew film really well, because I had been, by the time I went to grad school, already been working with film since, I don't know, 15 years or something. And so I understood film quite well. And so movement was the thing to introduce. It was the thing that I hadn't thought about before. And it was, I do remember like putting conscious effort into that, in the way that I put a lot of conscious effort into communicating a story in a visual image without using words. There was a lot that I wanted to say with my thesis project, and it's so tempting just to put words in a photograph. And I would spend a lot of time just kind of a journal writing, like just sort of like, how can I express this without words? And I would like write out just like different ideas, just brainstorm journaling of like what symbols could express X, Y, or Z thing, and how could I put these little like Easter eggs in the picture that would give people clues as to what the picture was about. And it was that was a great skill for being a filmmaker, because now it comes to me so naturally, but it is a skill. It's something like you have to work on, is visual communication. And so when it came, like by the time I was reading scripts and trying to visualize like how to represent stories, the idea of communicating a story in a single frame was already something that I had been working on for 10 years. And so that came pretty naturally to me, but it was like, okay, then how do we move the camera to tell a story? It was like the single frame was like very clear. And so I remember in a similar way thinking, okay, how can the camera movement support this? It wasn't intuitive right away. And I had to like think about that. The part that is intuitive is handheld.
Sure.
Because it's like dancing. It's like me being in the scene. And so I think in a way that's why it feels so comfortable to me. It's like acting. It's like dancing. It's like I'm in the scene and I can improvise and spontaneously interact with the actors and go where the scene wants me to go without having the restrictions of dolly tracks or whatever, a slider. Like I'm not stuck. I can like just be in the moment.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, with all of the beautiful things you've talked about across so many areas, what would you like my audience to do as a creator's challenge?
Okay, so my creator's challenge is exactly what I was just talking about, is to tell a story in a single picture and don't use words. Oh. So craft a picture, you can, whatever that is to you, but try to communicate a message with just images.
I like that. I like that so much. I want to do it.
I learned a lot from doing that.
Yeah, and I will say again, like, check out her website because your photography is so beautiful. And I've loved working on films with you. But I think that's a quick and easy way to see your aesthetic, which is so strong and powerful and moody and beautiful. It's really, really powerful.
Thank you.
And where would you like people to find you?
You can find me on my websites.
Great, and I'll have that in the show notes.
And on Instagram. I'm not the best marketer of myself, but I post on Instagram. Leonora Makes Movies.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for coming and chatting with me. It was wonderful to talk to you. Cheers.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Join the community and share your creative challenges on Instagram and Facebook at Creators Cafe by Kika Labs. And also check out my website, kikalabs.com, KIKALABS.com, to sign up for the mailing list so you always know when a new podcast is released, and to check out my coaching and digital courses to help you be a more confident and joyful creator.